That I recognize the gentlelady from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Knight, thank you for your testimony today. In 2022, gun ban activists, amalgamated bank, and far-left politicians pushed for the creation of an unconstitutional merchant category code to be assigned to firearms retailers to identify, quote, suspect purchases and report purchasing patterns to law enforcement, a clear unconstitutional infringement on Second Amendment rights, and a clear backdoor to a gun registry. In fact, failed New York Attorney General Tish James specifically mentioned the importance of labeling gun and ammunition sales as a way to indicate an imminent crime. Since then, some states have banned the code, while states like California have mandated it to surveil Americans' purchases. This is why I introduced the Protecting Privacy in Purchases Act with Congressman Barr and Hudson to put a stop to this code and protect law-abiding Americans from this infringing unconstitutional overreach. Can you explain how does this code threaten Americans' privacy and constitutional rights?
Thank you very much. This code, and if we were to do similar codes for other sensitive issues, risks creating a raft of false positives where individuals who are potentially engaging in Second Amendment activity, because it's important to know that the MCC doesn't tell you what people buy, it just tells you where they buy it, right? Will be reported to the government as potentially suspicious for no real basis, or at least not a basis that is likely to be reasonable. And that's going to create a database that is available that could be searched later. One of the dangerous things about this financial database is that, or these financial records, is that they're retrospective. And even perhaps just as bad is that there's precious little reason to believe it would be effective at its stated goal for a host of reasons I can get into if you want.
Yes, please expand.
Okay, so the problem here is that you won't know what someone buys. You're expecting banks to correctly identify what is really a hallmark of violence. You're expecting them to report it promptly. You're expecting law enforcement to then act on it promptly and effectively. And so I'd like to point to, I don't know if they'd like me pointing to it, but Guns Down America has a report that advocates the MCC, but if you look at the examples they point to as possible examples where this could have helped, it's hard to believe they would, either because there's such a short time frame, 12 days. There's a reason to believe, I don't see why we believe that 12 days would be enough time for law enforcement to act on it, because we don't know how fast it takes the government to use any SARs. Or it's hard to actually differentiate suspicious activity from legitimate activity. Rather, they look at cases and then work backwards. So we don't know what the denominator is. We don't know how many false positives there will be. Also, in the recent report, when we look at the key bank methodology, it's very, very broad. It's very over-inclusive. And its thresholds are such that it's far more than you need to spend to commit a horrible act of violence, but less than you'd spend to get a good hunting rifle and scope. And so how confident should we be that we're going to actually get more noise or signal than noise? I don't believe we should be. Given how little we know about how SARs are treated as is, I think we should be deeply skeptical.
And do you believe this is a backdoor to a gun registry?
I believe I believe some of its supporters view it as a backdoor to discourage firearms purchases.
Well, in my district in upstate New York, and Americans across this country are proud to stand up for our constitutional rights and understand this is an infringement on our constitutional rights. Why is my bill so important?
What's his point?
Well, ma'am, I think that efforts to restrict the collection of data at the bank level are the best option we have currently, because under current law, unless we can reform the BSA, once the bank has that data, government has that data. So preventing the collection at the bank level is your first best option.
Thank you very much. I yield back.